What do you do with overwhelm? Overwhelm. Because I think about things. I don't feel things, I think about things before I can feel them. So it's really interesting for me to think about what I do with overwhelm. I was like, well, I'm not overwhelmed. Or maybe, let's see, I went through a divorce this year. I changed careers, dropped clients, added clients, moved halfway across the country. No, moved pretty much all the way across the country to move in with my octogenarian parents during a pandemic to help them weather through this. And I'm thinking about overwhelm. Okay, so overwhelm is not a discrete moment in my life. It might be a discrete moment for you, but I had to really kind of like peel things back a little bit to figure out the answer to this question. It's like, all right, so what do I do with overwhelm? Okay. Well, it brought me back to this moment in high school. Okay. I was sitting in my room and I was studying physics out of my physics textbook. And I was reading something and I kept reading it over and over because it was a complex idea and I had trouble with physics. Other science, not so much, but physics was really, for my 17-year-old mind, not an easy fit for me. So I was really struggling and reading this book and I was feeling frustrated. I was feeling frustrated with my own brain, and frustrated with like my sense of overwhelm. And I was so frustrated after, half an hour of trying to like figure this thing out that I just hurled that textbook across the room. I just threw it, it was like a sizable textbook, wham, across the room. And now granted, this is not a becoming activity. This is not like a really higher order response to overwhelm, having a violent outburst like that. And I knew it at the time and it didn't come often and I didn't do these things all that often, but it's kind of this core part of my personality in some ways, if we think about personality as various traits. There's that fear response, fight, flight, or freeze. Well, I'm definitely a fighter. So there's that kind of counterphobic response. Some people might say that it's because I'm half Italian. That could be also why. I might be a little more charged, maybe, because of that. And also, if anybody has studied Ayurveda, which is the Indian perspective of medicine, they break things up into constitutions, and I would qualify as higher pitta. Pitta is like, when you get stressed out, you get pissed off. Some people, they get stressed out, they get really anxious, and some people, when they get stressed out, they just hide, which, sometimes I wish I did that a little more, even when I wasn't stressed out. But anyway, so knowing this is like, it was like an insight. It's like, oh, wow, okay, so when I get overwhelmed, I just want to hurl things. I don't always, and I don't often. A few choice moments, never thrown at people, just for the record, not big on like violence towards. It's more just a release of energy. And I got thinking, it's like, oh, wait a second. Why do you think I juggle? Ha! What, because I'm an armchair Freudian, right? I will say that this is like a reaction formation to my violent outbursts. I actually have been able to channel the throwing of things into a quasi-art form. Let's call it that, okay? So it's definitely a way that I think that I have managed to address my more Scorsese-like outbursts, Tarantino-like outbursts, or something, and I don't even know if those guys get angry. I just know that they know how to portray it in a way that is artful. So I also think that it's comic in its way because, you're fighting against gravity, right? I mean, boy, Sisyphean in its way. So let's get started, okay? So I would hope that you have at least one item that you can use to combat your overwhelm today, and that would be some kind of a tossable object. So if you can see, look at all the tossable objects I have here. If you have a hacky sack, those are always very delightful. Hacky sacks, pick those up at your local store. You can buy actually faux juggling balls. These are the consumer brand juggling balls. Or you could do something like me. I actually am going to bring out my dress balls today because these are, you know, a little more formal. I can go black tie or white tie. But the thing is, we're not trying to, you know, we're not trying to juggle. We're combating overwhelm today. So all we have to do is focus on the present moment. This is what we are. So if you're overwhelmed, just like step away from what you're doing, set down that physics textbook, okay? Start there and just grab something to toss. And what you want to do is you want to just practice getting a consistent toss between your hands. And what we're shooting for is, if you can see sideways, we're shooting for just to kind of get it a little bit above the eye line. Just a little bit above the eye line and with a certain amount of control. As I mentioned last week, we're not used to playing catch with ourselves. We're used to playing catch with somebody else. So the impulse is to throw it towards something. You know, like I did with the textbook, although it was a little more entropic. And entropy, what is the adjective for that? Anyway, so what you want to do is just focus on the toss between the hands. And maybe some breathing. And maybe, you know, if your hips sway a little bit, that's cool. You know, just kind of, you have to lead up to this stuff, folks. And when we're combating overwhelm, we want to make sure that we don't overwhelm ourselves with like the task at hand, right? The task at hand is not juggling 3 today. The task at hand is to stop the overwhelm. Doing something kinesthetic, doing something that gets you out of your mind, get you out of your mind, get you out of your way. However you want to think about it, keep those balls in the air, guys. See ya.